Hi, I'm Cooper Hurst, and this is my wife Katie, and we ranch in Woodville, Mississippi. Hunt Hill Cattle is our home place, or cow-calf, yearling, and then ultimately they're fed out, processed to U.S. premium beef, which we're a member of.
We bought the property in 1990. This land here had been in row crops, soil isn't good for much of anything but either cattle or trees. So we bought some cattle.
We had no idea that we would go down this path of cattle ownership. Katie and I both grew up absolutely in love with horses from childbirth almost. We started dating when we were in high school. We had probably 7 or 8 horses at our farm, and she said that's the only reason she married me, which I think at times that's probably true.
We both had business degrees, but not any cattle experience really.
Today about half the property is timber and the rest pasture. You know, we started modest. I mean, you know, yes, a steep learning curve, but we immersed ourselves in every facet and every resource for learning, from books to seminars to friends that were in the business that became great mentors.
We are first generation cattle people, but there's nothing I don't like about it.
There's 3 things that I never fail to discuss when we're talking to people that are new to this regenerative ag. And our effort to create our own fertility without having to buy expensive inputs. We started down the path of adaptive multi-paddock grazing, AMP grazing. That was first and foremost. And we also learned with friends that we grazed cattle with in Texas how important stockmanship was. And it immediately dawned upon us that cattle health does not come in a bottle. But we realized that stockmanship improves cattle gain, it improves cattle health, it greatly eliminates and reduces antibiotic use. And then the last thing, we learned about soil health, and we heard Ray Archuleta and Doug Peterson make a presentation, and they started the presentation with the slate test, the aggregate stability test, visuals with these glass canisters and how soils would either hold together or fall apart when mixed with water under different practices. Katie and I looked at each other and said, my gosh, the light bulb went off. And the interesting thing is, and I always tell young people, particularly who are trying to get in this business, those were management changes that did not cost a thing. You know, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results.
The kind of aha moment when you found out, you know, we had been doing soil samples, you realized that we had been putting the synthetic fertilizer on. You were talking to your agronomist, and you finally asked him, you know, we're not seeing any improvement. And he said, well, this is a yearly thing. And Cooper said, you mean I have to do this every year? And he said, yeah. And he said, for the rest of my life? And he said, yeah. And that's when we realized, no.
That happened in 2008 when potash and DAP went to over 1,000 a ton, that financial crisis, and nitrogen was out of sight too. Every 3 to 5 years we would do soil tests, and I went back for years and just saw what kind of progress we made. And other than a little bit of organic matter increase, we really had not any improvements. I said, this is insane. You know, it was an easy decision because a pasture guy, you know, I'm not even sure a row crop guy could, but a pasture guy certainly couldn't afford those kind of potash and DAP prices. And we started, you know, we just used a little nitrogen, but we were on a mission there to reduce our nitrogen use. And we did that through the high density grazing, through the planting of legumes. You know, we tried to do it, you know, through forages and biology. And that's what the soil health principles taught us. And working with nature, again, driven by finance in our minds, and then it just became so much bigger than where we thought we were going. but we worked at it over time, and our very first effort was high-density grazing. By far, in our mind, grazing is the most important tool. It's not an expensive item to undertake. If I was a young person, I would tell you, become a good grazer. You can do it with low-cost electric fencing to allow yourself to manage your pastures more effectively and productively. Water and shade are the other components that you have to work around, but you have to have electric fencing, which can be, portable energizers and polywire and tread-in posts. Shade, you need to, it depends on, again, where you are. You work your pasture system around shade and water and fencing, and you learn those skills, however you choose to learn. It's more about rest and recovery. You don't want to eat everything into the ground. It's not good for the plants, it's not good for the soil, it's not good for the animal. So, you want to, theoretically maybe take about half the plant, which is where the highest nutrition and highest energy is, and then rotate and allow full recovery of that plant. But that's all just things you'll learn over time, and it's like dividing a pasture. Don't overthink it. Split it in half. Just do something. Split it in half, and the next time maybe split it again, and you'll learn it over time.
This is a Cali pea, or I think a Singletary pea, and it's a legume, and it started coming up in the pasture, and we didn't know what it was. We started noticing it. It's got a beautiful little flower, and we asked Wink Allison, and he said this was planted in the 1950s, and it was just latent seed bank, and because of the fertility in the soil, it started coming up. And now it's all over the pasture. We were told in the beginning that we could not increase our organic matter in our soils in our lifetime. When we first started, our soil tests showed that we were less than 1%. We just did some soil tests, and we're at 4, and well, in different pastures, but we've done it to 4%.
And that's one of the things that we found that's been so exciting in this AMP grazing is, with this hard grazing with long rest and recovery, all these plants that are in the latent seed bank that appear.
Like I said, diversity. Everything has a different, almost purpose. We talked about it, like I said, you can eat spinach. Spinach is so good for you. If you ate spinach every day and that's all you ate, that's just not a very healthy diet. So, you need the spinach and the broccoli and the cauliflower and all the different things. And we talked to different nutritionists, and they said, yes, this diversity is a much better diet for the cows than straight ryegrass. That's what we did for so many years, is we had ryegrass and a little crimson clover. That was what we planted. And this is a just much more nutritious diet for the cows.
In 2020, we started another operation with a dear friend, a young man that we met probably 15 years ago on one of these field days. A couple of years later, we start buying Red Angus bulls from them. And then, it's funny, I'm telling you, God leads you down a path. So we had a partnership, another entity in Louisiana, and we lost that lease. And then within 6 months, Michael called and said, my partners want out of the Red Angus business. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I said, well, tell me, what are you thinking? And so one thing led to another. And so we bought out Stark Ranch and formed Southern Reds LLC with Michael and Caitlin, and Katie and I, and another partner who was my former CPA, Jonathan and Batarza, and his wife Karim. All bring different things to the table. Michael is operating manager, and you know, focused around Red Angus genetics, grass raised, commercial and registered, and commercial heifer development, Red Angus based heifer development. Really 3 unique personalities with different skill sets, and we're all focused on the same, philosophically the same, you know, the same holistic approaches. So we're thrilled, and we're just scratching the surface. So that's kind of where we are there. Our soil's getting better, and our cattle getting better, and our forage is getting better. I mean, all the indicator species, our bird counts are way up, and we know that scientifically compared to conventional grazing. We know our insect populations are way up, and those are all being documented right now with research. So we'll do this till the day we die, we think, until we can, and then hopefully at some point we'll have when we can't physically do it, have a manager, and then I can just ride around, drink beer, and give orders. Friendships we've made on this journey has been truly amazing, and we've made lifelong friends from all over the country, and that's irreplaceable.